another angle on this is robotics, right? So the biggest problem in robotics was the software. We didn't have the ability to like navigate. Like, it turns out that the real world, navigating the real world is extremely complex. Like, our brain is doing an enormous amount of computation to make that happen, and it's just so intuitive to us. Like, we don't really think of it as like a super hard problem, right? Like, you reaching down for that cup and like lifting it and so on is just such a like so much of our brain just is built to like operate that, and not just the brain but like the entire nervous system. And it doesn't because it wasn't a conscious action. We never really or as conscious of an action, we never really thought of it as a hard problem, but it turned out to be extremely difficult, and that held back robotics for for the last 50 years. And sure, like there's a lot of like hardware developments and so on that's happening, but the biggest blocker was software. Like, we just could never get these systems to work well. And even like we used to joke that oh man, if like the robots ever get like start chasing you, just go upstairs. Like, there's no way they can like get up the stairs.
Yeah, nice.
And today, like the software for that is like super ready, right? And so that means that we're entering the landscape where we're manufacturing large fleets of robots that will be generating an enormous amount of data and transacting and interacting with all of these systems. So the internet is about to explode in terms of the generation and use and remixing of like massive data flows.
But now we're getting to a point where we really better capture that data, because actually now we can imbue all of that data with intelligence. Like, someone can look at that data. It's an AI agent.
Yeah.
Whether it's the one that generated the log and is retrospectively like inspecting its own logs to see how it arrived at a particular decision, or another agent, like inspecting some outputs and like, enacting on that. We've kind of got to this point where like actually we can process all of the data that we're producing and produce more, and like it's sort of exponential, but that's okay because we have this exponential growth in agent capabilities as well. So it's quite
Yeah.
interesting, because it's like actually the data deluge might actually be like has been a problem to deal with in the past, and now it's like it's not a problem. We just have to build the sort of infrastructure to like allow us to process it. Like, someone's going to process all that data now. That's kind of wild.
Yeah, and we're also getting dramatically better ways of integrating and analyzing and extracting meaning and utility out of that data. So, like, as soon as you have, think about how many cameras are out there. Think about like robotics. Like, you immediately can embody a lot of these systems and now generate slash collect real world, real time data around the world, right? And so like the data wall is not like a real thing. It's just like
It's always like evolved from some human action. We're getting now to the point where like we're getting AI maybe making decisions about where to place sensors or what types of sensors to like engage with, but also creating data, right? Like, and some people, you might refer to that as like synthetic data. But now there's like we're getting to the point now where there'll be no human in the loop once the loop is started.
I think right now it's very like location internet protocols native, where it's like, oh, you have to know where you put the data and do you have like the right address and identifier and so on. Like, you could be having the same set of data component, or like you may already have the data you're looking for in your own device or like in a device next to you, and like you shouldn't be like trying to like fetch it from like some server really far away, right? And so there's another case where as hardware, there's these like hardware scaling laws. Computing famously through Moore's law gets denser and cheaper. It sort of like doubles every 18 months or so, and storage does it like every 11 to 12 months. Like the last few years, last decade, hard drives haven't quite kept up with that as much, but like SSDs continue to have like this kind of curve. And what that means is like, and by the way, bandwidth is not getting nearly as fast as kind of pervasive as fast, which means that over time the storage capacity of every device just greatly amplifies relative to like the data that you can send between devices.
Right.
So that means you just like are able to just store more and more and more in each device, and so that means you want to replicate huge amounts of the data that you need, so that you're not like going around and fetching it all over the internet. You're like pre-locating it where you're going to need it.
Yeah.
It's going to become so cheap to like just carry around huge bundles of data that like you shouldn't be going around getting it. I've actually been kind of surprised that like Programming language package managers haven't really realized that laptops today come with terabytes because you could just preload like huge sections of the package manager standard library in with like the first bundle that you like install or whatever,
Yeah.
and like you don't have to like take as long to install packages and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, every computer, every Mac comes with like latest or some version of Python. Like half the Python libraries should just be there when you
Yeah,
open up a laptop. Yeah, for sure. That I mean, it's funny. It's funny that that's been the sort of like because I mean, I guess at some point we start dealing with physics. You can only send things over a wire so fast, but you can like physically have something bigger and bigger and bigger, sitting next to you. So it sort of makes sense, but it's a disappointment of I think of like distributed computing that it's like honestly still makes a lot of sense to store like a shit ton of data on a hard drive and mail it to someone
yeah.
than
Well,
to just
that's
send
gonna
it.
continue to make like what I'm trying to say is like the bandwidth curve is improving slower than the storage density curve. So every year it's going to make more sense. So like every year, and this
Right.
goes back to like the Tenenbaum claim of like, hey, never underestimate the bandwidth capacity of like a station wagon full of hard drives or
Right.
like full of tape, like speeding down the highway, right? And like that's a, you load up a huge amount of data on like storage tapes and then you like drive it somewhere. And yeah, I'm kind of saying like that is just gonna amplify and increase. Like I think there are like a few moments where like this could go the other way, which is like, okay, fine, if we get full satellite internet connectivity everywhere, that like increases the bandwidth capabilities a bit. If we happen to get like massively better, like large wireless networks that kind of like meshed better, like maybe that could like change this fact a little bit, but it's only like a staving off the inevitable, like the ability to like to make smaller and smaller ways of storing and representing bits just means that you're just going to be able to like store vast quantities of data in very small spaces. And so that means like the over time, the process of sending messages is really about like updating on new information, but you're going to have like very large copies
Right.
of everything just kind of spread
That
around.
makes sense. Yeah.
um,
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. It becomes a medium for knowledge sharing rather than like knowledge imbuing or something. Or
Yeah, and
knowledge
it might change the
updating.
paradigms of how systems work, right? Now, today we do everything kind of like based on fetches, and it might it might change things to be much more push oriented, where like as you have updates, you like push them to like repositories, and over time, these repositories like push the data to different locations. Kind of how CDNs work today. Like CDNs were already work that way, where like as soon as there's some new thing that you want to distribute, like it gets pushed to a bunch of the servers everywhere, and like now they're like available locally. So just that, but like to the extreme, where that it starts getting pushed to you like to your device at home or something.